Hello, how's it going? Good, grand, great, fantastic. Yep, it's Friday, and that means it's me again, Ginger Greek, back on the Breakfast Club. I'll shut up now. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank Kazumi, Nathan, and Got That Funk for their video responses. Really do appreciate it. They made some excellent points. Rather than discuss, because I want to try and keep this as short as possible, a lot of the points I'm going to bring up kind of cover what the other gentlemen covered in their videos, and if I just repeat what they say, then it's just too much repetition, so I apologize if I skim over their responses. So on a local level, how would I tackle radical Islam? I do think that, yes, sadly, because of the threat posed to the public, you know, any public, even Muslims as well, I do feel that MI5 should play a bigger role in spying, yes, I know, spying on areas that are known to kind of have, like, radical groups. For example, there's, like, Luton, there's parts of East London, there's parts of, like, Bradford, I think there are parts of Birmingham as well. That kind of have, like, Luton in particular is really, like, Luton's not far from me. I do go there often because I like the mall there, and it has a big Muslim community, and a lot of the communities there are of the kind of Wahhabitist sector of Islam. Not saying they're all troublemakers, for the love of God, no, but you know, there are, like, for example, what happened in the Buckingham Palace where 2 coppers were stabbed. That individual was from Luton. And Muslim communities do have to play a bigger part in alerting authorities, even if it's just an inkling, because what you don't report has a knock-on effect, and it also affects your own community, your own people. You got to think, just reporting one person, and if that person is not found guilty of anything, that's absolutely fine. But if you know they have, like, radical views, then sadly you have to monitor them. You have to, because your ideology poses such a threat, you have to kind of, that person waives their rights to anonymity, and it's for the greater good, I personally feel. Of course, you know, people, human rights advocates might fight against that, but hey, you know, tough shit. When you have a violent ideology, it doesn't matter which, even if it's white supremacist, Nazi ideology, you kind of waive your rights, because your version of your ideology is not for the greater good. It doesn't help humanity as a whole. You know, I'm always one of those people, what's for the greater good? If it's for the greater good and everyone benefits from it, then you have to go down that route at the behest of other people. Fuck it. So there's that. Of course, just to say one thing as well, Muslim communities actually are playing their part as well in helping to tackle radicalized individuals within their own community. They also now have a conference. I should have put this up on my screen, but I didn't. They have a conference with run by Muslims about how to tackle terrorism in their own communities and what to do in a terrorist attack, things like that. So they're playing their part. They're just as fed up of it as we are. In fact, they're more fed up with it because they just want to live their lives as normal. And of course, they're all targeting, in particular, in one of my videos that I talked about on my main channel, or Ginger Greek channel, was like the biggest victims of the Islamophobia are women. Because they wear what they wear, they're an easy target. And I say, approx to those people, they're fucking cowards for attacking women. If you want to attack radical Muslims, you know, got fisticuffs with each other, that's absolutely fine. You know my stance on violence. I'm okay with it. On a prison level, Kazumi hit the nail on the head there about splitting groups up, isolating them. I'd also add bringing behavioral psychologists to kind of help them break away from that kind of radical ideology, because when they get out, you know, you want them to function as normal members of society, and going with that ideology, it's not going to help them. It's gonna, you know, stifle their chances of getting a job out there. I mean, they've got the criminal record, they also need that kind of particular thought process, you know. So I bring in behavioral psychologists to kind of help them. In terms of travel, again, Kazumi and Nathan, you know, hit the nail on the head. Better, they have to be vetted more. I feel that if they go back and forth too often and there's murmurs of them being radicalized while abroad, then their passports should be seized and they should not be allowed to re-enter the UK. Pretty much what they've done as well with a bunch of people that went off to fight for ISIS. They've had their passports seized and they cannot return to the UK, or ones that are here cannot leave the country. And I think that's a great idea. People argued against that, and I think those people are fucking dumb. I think that's one of the best tactics to do, is if they do go there, is have their passport seized, they cannot re-enter the country. If you want that perfect Wahhabi Salafist ideology, you can live in one of those countries. Furthermore, if it gets to a boiling point where it's too much, I also feel that people that are preaching here in this country, again, if it gets too much, should have their citizenship revoked, even if born here, and shipped off to one of these Wahhabist paradises. But that's only on extreme cases. In terms of what else was there? Oh yes, the internet one, which was something I forgot to mention. Nathan covered that beautifully. Is Anonymous are doing a great job in tackling that themselves. They're doing a lot better job than MI5 are, and there's also cases of them obviously reporting these kind of websites to MI5, so they're working very well. And if I was MI5 or the CIA, I'd work a lot closely with these anonymous groups, because obviously they're doing their part for the greater good, again, on a community-based level, which is fantastic. So build up on that. But the most important one is the political aspect. Now, I'm not going to go into details about the history of it. You're all aware, it's a very intelligent group here, a lot smarter than me. I'm just a ranty redhead. Right. So on a political level, I do feel that there has to be a lot of pressure put on politicians. It has to be seen as haram dealing with countries like Saudi Arabia or selling arms to terrorist groups. I think there should be huge punishment. I personally feel that selling arms to countries like Saudi Arabia or like groups like ISIS is treason, and it should be dealt with in an extremely harsh punishment. Politically, you should have your as an MP, you should be fired immediately. If any MPs that vote in going to a senseless war, any MP that vote for military intervention where there doesn't need to be military intervention. I mean, for fuck's sake, when Zimbabwe went into chaos, the British government did nothing. But Iraq, yeah, we went in there straight away. Okay, it's our duty to keep a close eye on our politician, to make sure that they do not, that they suffer the consequences for being acquaintances in this, in being collaborators in helping to fund and build, helping with radicalizing people abroad. Another country that needs to suffer the consequences for this is Saudi Arabia. We must, as politicians, then put pressure on Saudi Arabia, because they are one of the biggest funders of terrorism. Not just terrorism, they build schools and mosques in countries, and those schools and mosques are preaching their fucked up ideology of Islam, and that's one of the biggest problems out there. If you look at what's happening in Bangladesh, if you look at what's happening in Libya, in Morocco, in Tunisia, the money traces back to Saudi Arabia. They're the ones funding the schools and the mosques that are teaching this kind of fucked up ideology. And they know exactly what they're doing. They're helping to plant the seeds for the youth that'll come up and be just like the Saudis. So they have to suffer immense consequences. I think one of the best things we did is this move, is a political move to move away from oil for petrol cars, and that's going to have a huge impact, I feel, on oil economies. And I think it's one of the best things to do because it's non-violent as well. Sanctions should be imposed on Saudi Arabia. I think sanctions should be imposed immediately anyway, because of what they're doing in Yemen and Qatar, and also funding what they've been doing with selling weapons to ISIS and funding them as well. Also penalties should be imposed on like the US somehow for helping funding this kind of thing. So on a political level, it has to be, first of all, you start with your MPs, make sure that they are, and any government that collaborates with these known terrorist groups. Make sure that they suffer in by-elections and general elections, that they're ousted, and make it such a taboo, such haram, that they don't even think about it. Because at the end of the day, politicians care more about their own political careers than anything. And if you put pressure in that sense, it will have a huge impact abroad. Huge impact. Because if we can't sell arms to the Saudis, they can't arm people as well. Or arms to any country that would arm terrorist groups. So yeah, that's it really. I think I've covered it all. Yeah. That is all. Thank you very much. I won't be doing another round robin for a while. Join me next week when I talk about how to get rich in just 60 seconds.